break the bones into life, scream and shout into life.
With 2010 out of the way, we now come across a new year of movies. Looking back on the movies of last year though, it's never complete without going over what the best was. Now before I begin, keep in mind I have not seen all movies. Black Swan, True Grit, The Town, 127 Hours, and Let Me In are all movies that have received generally positive reviews. But because I have not seen them, I cannot list them in this category. So please don't be disappointed with what I have, for it's also my opinion. So without further delay, I'm GoldenFox bringing you the countdown of the top 10 movies of 2010. Number 10. How to Train Your Dragon. As I may recall, I ended my review of this movie with a matinee rating, due to my criticisms of its generic story. Over time, however, I felt I judged this movie way too hard, as I discovered that there's more to a movie than just its story. Much like Avatar, How to Train Your Dragon manages to carry everything else around its flaws to save the overall values of the film. And as I watched it the second time on the Blu-ray release, it was amazing. The interactions with Toothless and Hiccup carry some of the richest chemistry of the two. Toothless carries no dialogue or any lines. He provides the simplest expressions that drive the story forward for Hiccup, and thus Toothless is my favorite character in the whole film. The other is of course the flight sequences. As I've said previously, they are amazing and full of life to see. Within its flaws, other than the generic story, I was skeptical about Hiccup's interaction with his father. But it's thankfully downplayed, and not as cheesy as I made it out to be. DreamWorks animated features always intend to carry pop culture references, and it gets annoying as hell. But How to Train Your Dragon did everything differently, and stood away from its stiff routine, and it's what stands out to me more. With the touching humor and those energetic flight sequences, Chris Sanders and Dee Du Bois did a fantastic job directing this movie, even if it isn't perfect. Thus it lands on the edge of the list.
DreamWorks How to Train Your Dragon.
Number 9. Predators. I never planned on adding Predators to the list, so as it may seem ridiculous at first, it is also why I put it low on the list. It's only now that we have a more than decent readaptation of what we know of after that abysmal Alien vs. Predator, or Childhood Memories if you're someone like me and my brother who grew up with the franchise. Predators dives deeper into the mythology, the culture, and the overall environment of the planet. It shows their inhabitants and what they do to provide and improve their tactical skills and stalking the prey by their game and reserve routine. While it is a movie that reiterates what we've seen before in the first Predator, as well as giving us some more survival horror cliches, director Robert Rodriguez used these elements to pay tribute to it without the critical flaws Requiem suffered. The characters are in depth in a way we would react to them. We don't know who they are, who to trust. All what matters is survival. Not to mention the good twist that is used at the end of the story. So it does stand away from large predictabilities. Don't get me wrong, it's not as good as the first Predator, but it's damn good enough to make it on the list. Number 8. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. Easily one of the silliest yet most creative and innovative romance movies I've ever seen on screen. Within the many video game references, colorful special effects, and many stylized action sequences, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World symbolizes how love can be a game to a literal extent. He scores many points and coins and faces one challenging evil ex-boss after another. With all this in mind, Michael Cera improves his acting so much more than whatever movie he was previously in. He's much more active than ever. The only downside of this movie though is that some of the silliness can be a little too much. One of the exes, for example, was performing a musical number and it got way too weird. Not that the whole movie never was, but I digress. Shamefully, this movie didn't do well at the box office as it should have, but as it's critically successful, it's a high chance that Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a cult classic.
Scott Pilgrim vs. the World.
Number 7. Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 1. Being the second to the last of the Harry Potter installments, Deathly Hallows Part 1 builds up a lot of somber emotions, exposition, and much more ready to excite the final conclusion of the series with the second part. One being the main plot of the film, as it also gives us the previous characters and plot pieces we remember from the previous installments. Another is the subplot of the main characters. It gives us the concerns of survival, chase, family, and trust. Each of the three main characters have been outstandingly well acted by these, from the usual cast of Daniel Radcliffe, Rupert Grint, and Emma Watson. Though many say it's the darkest of the Harry Potter series so far, I still think Goblet of Fire is, as I couldn't even sit through it all. Harry Potter has been a great series from the start, and even though there were some hits and misses to the public, Deathly Hallows Part 1 is so far one of the best I've seen. As a movie on its own, of course, considering I haven't read all the books. It's only a matter of time on how well concluded the grand finale of the series will become. Number 6. Shutter Island. Shutter Island is generally not my kind of movie. I don't usually watch thrillers or horror movies of some sort, because most of them fail at best at trying to impress me. Shutter Island, on the other hand, contains a well-thought-out story in which psychologically dives into your mind behind Detective Daniel, as we're given several plot pieces that scatter everywhere throughout the film. With the critical thinking story in mind, the performances is at its best from Leonardo DiCaprio and Ben Kingsley. They all do their best to play their roles to fit together a story like this, whether you were able to predict the ending or not. Furthermore, it looks great. It has nice scenery at the hospital and dream sequences that are visually poetic and psychotically depressing. However, the supposed scariness by other patients, the memory sequences that's present, can be a little over the top, but for the most part, it actually crept me out. For a thriller this age, it worked. And I also have to admire that DiCaprio has done outstandingly well in 2 movies so far. Let's hope he keeps this up on Shutter Island, as it's one of the picks of 2010.